Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
And happy Friday to the Triad. It is TGI Friday here on WWBG 1470 AM, which means it's time for Franchise Players. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. Hope you've been enjoying the TGI Friday lineup here every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. on WWBG 1470 AM. You get the pit stop with Randy Pettit at 3 p.m., Out of Pocket with Michael Davis, which is now live at 4 p.m., and then, of course, you got Franchise Players at 5. Stick around after the show. We've got state high school playoffs going on here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, 6 o'clock p.m. over on the East Forsyth Sports Network. East Forsyth softball taking on Davie in round 2 of the high school state softball playoffs. And then at 7, it's East Forsyth versus Weddington in softball. And then at 7 o'clock, it's East Forsyth versus Davie in baseball, round 2 over there. We will have both games for you. JP Mundy will be on the call at 6 p.m. Myself and Chad Delp will be on the call at 7 p.m. You can listen to both of those live at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com. With me, as he is bi-weekly every other week, Mr. David Glenn, award-winning sports writer and host and columnist and everything in the house. What's going on, DG?
I'm doing great, Des. Good to be with you again.
I love doing Sports Buffet with you because it gives me a chance each week to kind of hit a couple hot spots amongst a random array of sports topics going on in North Carolina. And you're one of the few gentlemen that I know of that I feel is equipped to be able to answer these questions efficiently and quality-wise. Like, we're going to get a good answer here. So there's a lot of stuff going on right now in May. Like, a lot of sports are crisscrossing over each other. Let's just start off right here. In North Carolina, the Carolina Hurricanes eliminating the New Jersey Devils in 5 games Thursday night, 3-2 in overtime. They're going to face the winner of the Florida Panthers versus Toronto Maple Leafs in the Eastern Conference Finals. DG, are the Canes now the overall favorite to win the Stanley Cup? And what's the biggest thing standing out to you about this version of the Carolina Hurricanes in all the years you've been covering them?
Yeah, I've covered them since their inception here in North Carolina. I've actually even been one of those season ticket holders for most of their time, at least here in Raleigh, after, of course, they started in your part of North Carolina at the very beginning as a franchise here North Carolina, temporarily, while they waited for their arena to get ready. I do think they have as good a chance, the Hurricanes, as anybody still standing in the NHL playoffs. And I'll also add quickly that this is a franchise that's only 25 years old, right? Some of these franchises in the NHL are 100 years old.
Yeah.
And the Canes have now been to 5 Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years. Memorably, they won it all in 2006. But to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, 20% of the time, one of every 5 years on average, is a pretty impressive accomplishment. And what's special about this team, I think, starts – you rotate 4 sets of forwards and you rotate 3 sets of defensemen in hockey. So and of course, you sometimes rotate 2 or more goalies. In their 25 years as a franchise, I have never seen a better 1 through 6 on defense for the Carolina Hurricanes. Brett Burns is a 37-year-old all-star. Jacob Slavin is a younger all-star. Brett Pesce and Brady Shea are good, reliable second-line defenders. And then Jalen Chatfield and Shane Gostisbehere have provided a pretty good third pairing. A lot of teams are afraid to throw their third pairing out there because it's just not up to par and certainly not playoff hockey in many cases. Rod Brindamore is one of the greatest leaders I have seen in any sport in my lifetime of covering sports. And when you're that strong on defense, your goalie's job is a little less complicated. When you're that strong on defense, you give your forwards a little more room for creativity. I think it just starts with it's a pain in the neck to play hockey against the Carolina Hurricanes. You just get bogged down offensively because they're so good at running their system. And to this point, you need to win 16 games to raise the Stanley Cup. The Canes have now won 8. So it feels like they've been at it for quite a while, but they're only halfway there. The Edmonton Oilers are really good. Other teams still standing are also good. But to me, these Carolina Hurricanes, especially with the Boston Bruins and others already eliminated, I like the Canes' chances as much as I like anybody else's now.
That Boston Bruins team, it reminds me of was it the 2001 Seattle Mariners that won like a billion games and then they got put out like early in the playoffs? It kind of reminded me of that. You've seen it from afar. And I just noticed once they were out, I'm like, well, hell, Carolina was right behind them the whole year. Well, not right behind them, but they were second pretty much the whole year in the Eastern Conference. So maybe that opens up some doors for the Canes. Maybe we get a world championship in North Carolina in about a month or so, a month and a half. So keep an eye on that for sure. David Glenn with us here in the Sports Buffet here on Franchise Players. Follow him on Twitter at David Glenn Show. Tonight, Game 6, Lakers versus Warriors over in the NBA. 10 o'clock, which is killing me and pretty much every working adult in America, unless you're on the West Coast. There's been so many times where I'll make it to halftime, and I'm so impressed with myself. Like, yes, I made it to halftime. I'll tell my wife I'm gonna go lay down and watch the rest of this in the bed. I go back, lay down, and like blink, and when I unblink, it's 2 a.m. The Heat Knicks game is being replayed. I have no idea who won the game, and it's happened like 4 times to me. So with it being Friday night, hopefully I'll be able to stay up a little bit later, even though we got Rundown Live Saturday morning. My question is this, and I'm going to ask Candace Cooper this question a little bit later on in the show. If Steph Curry leads this Warrior team to a series win over these Lakers after being down 3-1 to a LeBron James-led team, forget all the Anthony Davis is hurt, forget LeBron isn't 100%, forget all that stuff. Does the conversation about who the GOAT is have to include Steph going forward?
Ooh.
All things considered?
I don't know about GOAT number 1 because that Michael Jordan guy still leads the list in my eyes, and his resume obviously isn't going to change at this point.
I think more like, would you include him like as an option?
I'll tell you what, he's such a great shooting guard, but he's also a point guard. So whatever you want to call him, he is one of the great guards in NBA history. And I would argue he is the greatest shooter in the history of the NBA.
I'll take that.
So if you want to categorize the GOAT in terms of shooting ability, I think Steph Curry, proud Davidson product right here in our backyard. I think he is already the GOAT in that category. If somehow he leads the Warriors to that upset you just described, or at this point, I guess you could call it an upset because they were down 3-1, and then somehow wins another NBA title. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah.
That would be crazy.
And he'd have 3 without Durant and 2 with Durant. So that shifts that narrative too, because I've seen that where people are like, well, you had Kevin Durant for some of them. Yeah, well, some of them he didn't. Some of them he didn't have Durant, and they still won it, like last year or the 2015 season. So, I mean, there's an argument to be had. I just see LeBron get slipped into these arguments all the time, LeBron versus Jordan. And I'm like, there's a guy that exists during LeBron's era that has had the better of LeBron for about half of LeBron's career. Like, really, when you think about it.
To me, we all win. I mean, putting aside those late night, how do I stay up details that you just described. In your case, the funny thing, Des, is if you have trouble staying up for those 10 o'clock games, it's usually one of 2 things. You're getting old, which would more apply to me.
I'm coming to grips with it.
Or you work your tail off, which is would more apply to you.
I'm coming to grips with it.
That would apply to me earlier in my career. I'm trying not to work quite as insanely hard in this chapter of my career. But to me, we get to see 2 of the greatest. If you and I put together, let's just say a 13-man roster, right? The greatest NBA players of all time on a 13-man roster. I want both LeBron and Steph on that roster.
Yeah.
Right. And we get to see them not only in the latter stages of the playoffs, but going against each other again. They have a beautiful friendship. So while they're both intensely competitive, there is a massive mutual respect there. I love to watch it unfold. I almost wish it was in an even later round rather than it's pretty early.
It feels like it should be the Western Conference final. Like, that's what it kind of feels like. I know we're overlooking Denver, and Denver's been like the best Western Conference team all year, and Jokic and all that stuff, but it's just not as sexy as Lakers Warriors Western Conference final Game 6. Warriors. I didn't even realize this. I should have. Steve Kerr has never lost a Western Conference series. He's like 19-0, like since he became. Like never.
He's never lost one.
It's incredible to me. Like the years where the Golden State didn't make the playoffs a couple of those times. They lost the play-in game to the Lakers a couple years ago on that LeBron 3. The year that everybody was hurt right after Toronto had won in 2020. But when they're in the playoffs, since Steve Kerr took over as head coach, they have not lost a Western Conference series. They're 19-0. So we'll see if that's going to hold true tonight. That game, I believe, is on TNT. It's at 10 o'clock. Actually, I think it's ESPN. It's one of the two. David Clint joining us here on Franchise Players and Sports.
It is ESPN tonight.
It's ESPN.
Yeah.
Okay, ESPN 10 o'clock. I'll save for another day the wide difference between the halftime show on ESPN and TNT. TNT feels like they have 15 minutes for the halftime. ESPN is like 15 minutes of commercials and 2 minutes of the panel. It's maddening to me when I try to watch it. Let me get your opinion on this. Demarco Dunn became the 7th UNC player to enter the transfer portal on Thursday. Should Tar Heel fans be concerned?
My short answer is no. A slightly longer answer is you basically have to manage the transfer portal well if you want to win at the highest level in college basketball these days. I've dedicated some of my recent columns at chapelboro.com to these topics. And the bottom line is, if Hubert Davis was losing a lot of high-end talent via the transfer portal and not signing much transfer portal talent on the inbound, that would be a reason for Carolina fans to reach for the panic button.
Yeah.
But, the guys that they've lost, Demarco Dunn, Justin McCoy, Will Shaver, Dontrez Styles, in my opinion, those 4 guys probably would have never been big-time contributors for the Tar Heels. Obviously, Puff Johnson was a good role player. He leaves for Penn State. Tyler Nickel is a crafty young talent that might turn out to be really good at Virginia Tech. Hard to predict. And then Caleb Love, as you and I have discussed in the past, I won't be surprised if that's a win-win where the Tar Heels benefit addition by subtraction because of the bad chemistry and Love not fully embracing the Hubert Davis way. And maybe he becomes his best self at Michigan, and right. The Tar Heels and the Wolverines and Caleb Love all win in some way. But just remember that on the inbound, if you and I made a list of the most prominent dozen transfers that ACC teams have signed on the inbound, it's just important to give Hubert Davis credit for that part of the equation, because Cormac Ryan is going to be a good starting guard for the Tar Heels after being a good player for Notre Dame. Harrison Ingram would be one of, I'd argue, the 3 or 4. You could argue that Harrison Ingram is the number 1 incoming transfer in the entire ACC after the talent he showed as a prep All-American and then these last couple of years at Stanford. Mm-hmm. And then, a couple more guys. Jalen Withers of Louisville was a starter for the Cardinals, yes, on bad teams, but he's a good 3-point shooter. He's a 10 points per game kind of scorer. And then they got another good 3-point shooter in Paxton Wojcik, who played in the Ivy League last year. So you got to look at the big picture, right, as I see it. And when you look at the big picture, I would argue that the Tar Heels would be in the top 3 or 4 teams in how they've managed the transfer portal overall, meaning not only counting who left and how good they were, but counting who's on the inbound and how good they are.
It's a different world for sure. Carolina fans, I've been rewatching the actually I just finished the 10-part series, the history of the ACC tournament that's on ACC Network. I just finished rewatching it over the past couple of days, and it reminded me a lot of my childhood in the 80s, especially growing up knowing who's on everyone's team, pretty much knowing there's a star pretty much on every team, so every matchup is pretty good. Those Jefferson Pilot quadruple headers on Saturdays, like all that kind of stuff came flooding back. And I realized that with the transfer portal, NIL, all the movement and everything else going on in today's college basketball, that's never going to come back.
It's over.
There's no way. There's no way for it to happen. But kind of embrace this. Like, they put Hubert in this role because they saw this coming down the road, and Roy didn't want anything to do with it. And I can see why, because it's a lot to really kind of handle, trying to get your arms around this. But this will be the first Hubert Davis UNC team that he's really kind of molded from top to bottom without having limitations. Like, he's literally recreated the roster around Armando and RJ Davis. So I'm really curious to see how this works here. It will be a make or break year for Hubert, unfortunately, because the Carolina fan base is so impatient that they kind of forget what he did 12 months ago. So we'll see how that works out as well, too.
Hey, real quick, Des, for anyone wondering if we're exaggerating the seismic shift in how college basketball works, just remember this. 5 ACC teams made the NCAA tournament last year. 4 of those 5, the majority of their starting lineup were major college transfers.
Miami had
Duke
one of
was
the deepest runs.
Duke was the only one that kind of built itself the old-fashioned way. 3 of Miami's 4 best players were transfers. Most of NC State's best players were transfers. Most of Pitt's best players. In fact, Pitt's starting lineup was 4 major college transfers and 1 junior college transfer. That's
incredible.
I mean, how did Jeff Capel turn it around so quickly? Well, that's how. How did Kevin Keats save his job? Well, that's how.
Yeah.
How did Jim Larinaga go from 3 straight horrible seasons at Miami to 2 straight, 1 Elite 8, 1 Final Four? That's how. These aren't exaggerations. Like
it's a new way to build.
It is.
Yeah, you got to get out of the mentality of bringing in a recruit, letting them grow 3-4 years, and that kind of thing. That's going to still be there, but that's not going to be the way they build these teams anymore. Like that's just not the way.
That'll be a slice of the pie.
Yeah,
but that way, just signing, cultivating high school talent, that used to be 80 or 90% of the pie. How to build a college basketball juggernaut. Now, I mean, it might be 25% of the pie. That's how much things have changed.
I had a new A&T men's basketball coach, Monty Ross, on last week, and we were talking about this in terms of how he was planning on going about recruiting. And he mentioned that because of what's happening at the top, it's creating this like vacuum where high school seniors that may have got recruited like lower in, like with those programs, are getting overlooked completely. And then you got the guys that are going into the transfer portal that aren't getting selected by anybody because there's like 1,500 kids in there at one point. So there's a lot of different places to go find players now that didn't exist 10 years ago. And that's how you kind of got to go about building these programs. I'm up against the break. Follow DG on Twitter at David Glenn Show. You can read his work at chapelboro.com. And he's with us every other week. So by the time I see you again, depending on what happens Sunday, because your 76ers got a game 7 going on now all of a sudden against Boston. I wasn't going to put you on the spot and make you pick, but hopefully by the time we get back around to DG again, we'll be talking about his 76ers in the Eastern Conference Finals. So we'll keep an eye on that too. Appreciate you, DJ.
Appreciate you, my friend. Keep up the good work.
Coming up, Candace Cooper from the Locked On ACC podcast will come on and join me to play a little true or false. We'll be back in just a bit. You listen to the Franchise Players here on WWBG 1470 AM and WTOB 980 AM.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
Welcome back into Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Part of your TGI Friday lineup on WWBG 1470 AM every Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. You just finished listening to or watching Out of Pocket with Michael Davis, which is live now every Friday at 4 o'clock, and the Pit Stop at 3. So definitely check us out in the Triad. I wanted to do a little true or false because there's some NBA stuff I wanted to touch on. And, of course, there's some UNC stuff that dropped yesterday. And when it did, I had to reach out to my girl, Candace Cooper, host of the Locked On ACC podcast. What's going on, Candace? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
So I want to touch on a couple of things that I've come across on social media the past couple of weeks, debates that have gone on in some shape, form, or fashion. And one of the bits we do here is called True or False, where basically I'm going to ask random questions to you, and you give me a true or false and why you think it's that way. Okay. Starting off, let's start off in the NBA, because I know eventually we're going to get over to our heels in the ACC and what's going on with them. Mm-hmm. But first, let's start off with the NBA playoffs. Tonight, Lakers, Warriors, Game 6 in LA. Lakers have a chance to close out the series and potentially close out the Warriors dynasty. But I'm looking at it from the other end. If Steph Curry leads the Warriors to a series win over the LeBron-led Lakers after being down 3-1, you got to put him in the GOAT combo at that point, right? True or false?
Ooh, great question. I mean, for where I work, I have to say true because because Stephen winning is always good for business. I would say false only because we're at the tail end of LeBron's career. We're not in he didn't beat LeBron prime. So I can't see it being oh, you took down LeBron at 37 years old. No, I'm just kidding.
But he has took it down LeBron in his prime, right?
He has. I don't know. It's this weird dynamic because Stephen definitely is probably the most underrated GOAT of all time. Like, he doesn't get the recognition he deserves, but he's also had a hella good company. Like, let's keep it a buck. Like, Klay Thompson as your, right hand is certainly something LeBron hasn't always had, great stars next to him. But in this sense, I think it would be GOAT-like because AD is literally bigger than the entire Warriors team. And so for Stephen and the boys to be able to take them down, I think is very, like, you got to tip your hat to that.
I've been wrestling with this for about 2 weeks now, really ever since I knew they were going to play each other. And I'm like, hey, we may not even see this again. We may not see Lakers versus or Steph versus LeBron again with, their ages and everything else. Steph is 35. LeBron is 38, I think, 39. He's in his 20th year. So there's no telling, although he's apparently sticking around for Bronny. So we at least got a couple more years of LeBron before that. But I was thinking of Steph's resume and I'm like, okay, they always try to discredit him. They'll be like, okay, you got 4 rings, but 2 of them you got with Kevin Durant on the team and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, 2 of them he got without him. I mean, in completely different situations and completely different parts of his career. He's the only unanimous MVP in league history.
Yeah.
He's beaten LeBron before the series started. I think he was like 14-6 or 14-8 or something versus LeBron in the playoffs. Like everything skews towards him.
Right.
It feels like we give LeBron this extra credit. And I'm trying to figure out what the extra credit is for. Is it because he doesn't get in trouble off the court? Is it because there's no outside kids? Is it because of like...
Do we know that? No, just kidding. Let me not start rumors. I think when you have a machine, you're able to hide stuff better. But I mean, Stephen is just like, when you have the guy who's super nice, super talented, he doesn't, cause disruption. He doesn't really shake up media. He's not going to give you the fiery quotes. He's not going to give you any media day bites is going to make you say, oh, shoot, like here he comes. Like he just lets his game speak for himself. That's annoying to people who like popcorn must-see TV type moments. Like he's not going to be on an episode of Jerry Springer. Rest in peace. Like he's not that guy. And I think that annoys people because it's too clean cut and people just like live for controversy. So they're always going to discredit him, but they shouldn't. And it's one of those, you're not going to appreciate it till it's gone.
Host of Locked on ACC, Candace Cooper with us here on Franchise Players. You can follow her on Twitter at Candace D. Cooper. True or false? Anthony Davis is made of glass.
True. As someone who used to work for the Pelicans, like that boy cannot stay healthy. I don't get it. Like it's just, elbows to the face, popping in his back, hitting his elbow. I think he's probably tweaked every single part of his body. Every single part. I
will say this though. As much as he gets hurt, I'm a Laker fan, so I flinch when I see him hit the ground. If somebody hits him, if he winces, I'm just like, oh no. But I will say this, he has played through all of it pretty much in the playoffs. Like as much as we give him a lot of grief over getting hurt a lot, it's not like he's really missing a lot of games in the playoffs with it. Yeah. It's just, I don't want to say it's annoying. It just seems like bad luck for him.
Well, it just seems like if they lose, then that's your immediate go-to, right? Like, oh, he didn't have 100% healthy AD, and that's a cheap out for when they don't, or they're not able to figure it out. And I think kudos to him for being able to stay through games and push through and all the things. But to me, it's got to be a mental thing at this point. Like when you go down, how do you not fix your psyche to be like, oh, here we go again, or good Lord, and I have to push through, or I have to play, or people are going to give grief to LeBron, I'm going to give grief to my teammates because I wasn't out there. That's got to be some sort of head cycle for sure.
I mean, Barkley nicknamed him street clothes, and it stuck. How do you feel when a legend is calling you street clothes? Because every time they see you sitting in street clothes on the sideline, it's just.
I'm saying it gets to you.
But he's got a ring. He's got a ring, and he's got a chance. Honestly, if AD and LeBron, I don't think LeBron's 100% healthy either. To be honest, I think he wouldn't have played on that foot if they hadn't won that first play-in game. I'm not quite sure how much LeBron will be available because he's not moving exactly the way he normally does. And I know he's 38. He's not moving like he did 10 years ago, but he was pretty close. And now he's not moving that way anymore either. And there's times where I think it was game 4. They ended up winning it. But for the whole first half, LeBron didn't even take a shot. I was watching it what is wrong with you? And it made me think, when have I ever during Michael Jordan's career yelled at the TV, what is wrong with you? Why are you not shooting the ball? And there's been 5 or 6 times in LeBron's career where I've been like, why are you standing in the corner? What are you doing? They can't guard
Yeah.
you. Like, what are you doing?
100%. But I also think like Stefan's also hurt. Like the boy had to take breaks, and you see Kirk giving him like pep talks, like, "All right, we're gonna sit you down and let us know when you're ready to get back in." And I'm pretty sure Looney probably had food poisoning, sick, pneumonia. I mean, whatever he had going on, he tried to play through that. So it's like everyone's got a reason, excuse in the playoffs. Nobody cares. Like,
nobody cares.
I think PJ Tucker, the great Raleigh native himself, said it's a playoffs. You can't feel comfortable being at home. You can't feel comfortable assuming like it's just going to go your way. Like, everybody's hungry. And this is the best of the best for the reason. Like, we're one step closer to the conference finals. Like, you're going to get some high quality basketball done right.
It's crazy, too, because the Lakers and the Warriors are the 6th and 7th seed in the West. And I honestly feel like whoever comes out this series is going to beat Denver. Like, I don't know why. Well, maybe not Golden State. Like it's a matchup problem for them. I don't even know who's supposed to guard Jokic, but Jokic versus Davis, I'll take that all day. Like in terms of a 7-game series, and the Lakers have shooters, so I mean, that could go. I could see Lakers Nuggets, but Warriors Nuggets, that's one of those where it's like Steph has to go off like for 3 games, like for them to get kind of Christian.
100%.
Let me move over real quick over to the Eastern Conference because we've got a game 7 Sunday after last night. The Celtics will beat the Sixers on Sunday to win game 7. True or false?
Oh man. Again, because of where I work, I really want to say false because I need Embiid to have an MVP type season and I need this thing to keep rolling. But I think true because like Jalen and Jason know that if they don't figure this out, the band has to break up because of the money situation. Unless they want to be noble guys who taking pay cuts, try and run it back if they don't, which crazy, always take the money. But I think like the Celtics definitely have that dog in them. I'm not sure Harden and them are going to step up in big ways. Or Embiid for that matter, unfortunately. I don't know. I give Celtics this edge. So yeah, true.
76ers haven't been to the conference final since 2001 with Allen Iverson. I think I saw just walking through the living room a minute ago. They were showing highlights of the Celtics 76ers game 6, and James Harden had a dunk in it, and they said it was like the second dunk he's had all year.
And you got to also think about who their coach is. That doesn't give me confidence. Like as much as I think Doc Rivers is good for the game in terms of black coaches, like it's tough. It's tough. He's just not the one that's going to get them over the edge. And I think the young coach out of Boston has been doing really well. And, good for him for signing that contract extension because it's clear that he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, they ain't walking through the door because that's really the only series I can remember Doc actually completing and finishing out like in all of his stops, like Clippers here. Like it's wild, like why it happened.
100%.
I got it as a toss-up. I picked Lakers Celtics like midway through the season to be my final just for nostalgic reasons. I'm a Laker fan, so I'm kind of rooting for Lakers Celtics because to me, it seems like I'm not a LeBron fan. I am a LeBron fan. I've been a fan of his since high school, right? But it only throws me off when people throw him against Jordan and all that kind of stuff. But for me, as a Laker fan too, growing up, I'm like, okay, LeBron, you're a Laker, right? You did win a ring as a Laker. So did Wilt. If you want to be on the Lakers Mount Rushmore, I need you to win another one. And if you can beat the Celtics while you're doing it, there's only a handful of Lakers, period, that can even say that, So if you can do that and pull that off and get to 5, now we can have that conversation about GOAT. Because now you have done enough in my mind to be like, okay, let's see this. Right now, I don't even entertain it. But that's what I want Lakers Celtics. Because it'd be good for ratings. It'd be good for talk. It'd be good for the league. It'd be good for us. It'd be good for everybody. So that's what I'm hoping for. But the Celtics, man, it's like A-Day, B-Day. Like, I don't know which one's going up.
Well, hell, the Knicks and the Heat are like, okay, let's spice things up as well. And I think the Knicks fans would be insufferable if they made themselves into the Eastern Conference.
Right. Already are.
Let alone the finals. Like, Lakers-Knicks is what I can see. And that would just be like fans on fans on fans.
Julius Randle being a former Laker, and there's all kind. Oh goodness, let me drop over to college basketball real quick and our UNC Tar Heels. I kind of expected this, but not really because I had spoke to Brendan Marks like 2 weeks ago about this, and he laid out a scenario where he did not think this was going to happen, but he also said that if this did happen, this is probably why it's happening. Demarco Dunn announced he's entering the transfer portal. He's the 7th kid to enter from UNC after the end of the season. Hubert Davis ain't worried. True or false?
False. If he ain't worried, he crazy because 7 guys entering the portal is nuts. Like that high of a turnover when you aren't a new head coach that's never been around these guys. You were an assistant. So you've been, helping these young men develop and all the things. So to me, it's very telling that now that you get in the head seat, these guys are like, actually, no, I'm out. Bye.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, playing for Roy, being a Hall of Famer, that's one thing. Hubert is not on his Hall of Fame streak just quite yet. I mean, going to the national championship game, sure, that's excellent. But now it's almost like, all right, who are you really? Are you actually going to develop some of these guys? And it's become apparent like he doesn't want guys that he didn't actually go into living rooms, handpick himself. And until he does that, it can show improve with his actual quote unquote talent. He's not going to be satisfied. And he's probably fine with, the situation. But
I'll go a step further. I think he actually encouraged them to go. With all of them, really, all these bench guys, except for, even with Caleb Love, it was kind of announced it was a mutual decision. So it sounds like Hubert is like, all right,
he threw that boy under the bus.
Yeah. He's going to his third year. Because last year, people don't really realize, last year, Hubert didn't really get a chance to alter this roster. There weren't any scholarships really left. And Tribble came in, and did they have one more freshman that came in, or was he the only one?
I feel like he was the only one. I can't honestly remember. It's all been a blur, and I've never seen a roster move this much, especially from North Carolina. So it's like, I don't even know who's on the team until we actually start the season. And I still think there might be some changes, which is crazy.
Well, he's got 3 scholarships still open. And the rumor was that the issue here is that Elliot Cadeau is the problem. Because Elliot Cadeau, he's a junior, rising senior, but people are starting to say he might even make it to his senior year because he may reclassify and join Carolina this year. And Hubert learned his lesson from last year's Gigi Jackson fiasco, where he wasn't going to reclassify. His family changed his mind. By that time, Hubert didn't have any scholarships, so he's forced to go to South Carolina. I've heard things like one of those scholarships, Gigi might decide to come back to school and might go to Carolina anyway. I've heard Elliot Cadeau is coming in, and they told Derek Dunn. These things I heard. I didn't say I'm believing them. It's just things I'm hearing. The thing with Derek Dunn I've been hearing is that, okay, he had a deadline to enter the portal. I think it was yesterday or today is the deadline. And to make sure they had an extra spot, they told him to go ahead and enter the portal with the idea that if Elliot did not reclassify and come, Dunn would come back to Carolina.
Now, why would you do that? Now, I mean, sure, that could be the thing. They could, but if someone tells me to skedaddle, I'm not skedaddling back. Period.
Get out of here unless that guy comes. Well, if you don't come, then come back.
There's absolutely no way. I'm sorry. I'm not spinning that block because you could have had anybody else in that roster you told to do that, Junkie. You told me, okay, listen, no love lost, but wiping my hands of it. There's absolutely no way. Not doing it.
It's so late though in the process. It makes me feel like him deciding to do it now. He was told something that somebody's coming.
Absolutely.
Or, you know what I mean? We don't know who it is, but somebody's coming.
And
it was
I
a
think,
guard anyway.
Exactly. First of all, the 1 and 2 spot at North Carolina, do we have someone who can shoot? Where's Wayne Ellington? Do we have a Reggie Bullock? Do we have somebody that can shoot the tray? If we don't get Armando Baycott to find a jumper by the time the season starts, I don't care who you have on that team. Because if he's the man and RJ can't, get some consistency about him, it doesn't matter. None of this matters to me.
The kid from Notre Dame they brought in, Cormac Ryan, I think he's supposed to be a shooter. So I don't even know. Some of these guys, too, because I think the problem is everybody sees these names coming over, and I'm like, some of these guys are not going to play. Some of these guys are practice guys.
These guys are bodies.
Yeah, they're just there. The kid that came from Brown or whatever, he's not going to play 20 minutes. He's not going to play at all. But they're going to have 7 or 8 that'll be the guys. Yeah. It'll be RJ and Armando's show next year.
Yes.
They're going back. I'm cool with that. I wanted to ask you this because of something that happened before I get you out of here. Something that happened a couple weeks ago. Popular Raleigh sports radio, the OG got basically canceled midweek. I know that I know you have been, and they were tops of their book too. Station decided to go another direction. They're doing okay. Actually, matter of fact, they've started a YouTube channel, new podcast. They've got 3,000 followers already. It's been a week. They're going to be okay. But a lot of times that doesn't happen to us in the industry. And I know that we were talking about this right when we found out, on Twitter. It was me and you and I think B-Dot, a couple others, Chris Lee, where we've all, and I saw Chris Lee this past weekend. We were talking about this. We've all been in a situation in this industry where you feel like your job's secure, you're doing a good job, and then the rug is yanked out from underneath you. Can you Well, here's the question. Sports radio is contracting and will not resemble what it does today in a decade. True or false?
100% true. I think the podcast wave is here. It's not going anywhere. I think that the way people consume, sports news is ever evolving, and it will not look like sports radio necessarily, especially when you talk about gambling and you talk about, all the new trends and stuff with NIL. Like, we just won't see the standard traditional radio that we're used to seeing. Or, you have like Mad Dog and all that fun personality besides Stephen A. Like, it's not going to be the same as it shouldn't be, because we should evolve.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because even Tobacco Road, other than our main thing is live stuff. We run a lot of live sports, high school football, basketball, that kind of stuff here in the Triad. And then we have live studio shows that we produce here. But during the week, it's primarily podcast episodes that I run. And that's mainly to allow our commercial inventory to get fulfilled. So yeah. I mainly run those throughout the week. But you're right. I think it's the whole I'm 45. I came up in a world where it's like the Cosby Show came on at 8. So if you didn't sit there at 8 o'clock and watch it, you missed it. And now it's like you can get it whenever you want, like pretty much when it's your time. And that doesn't really suit sports radio. I'm just curious as to where it's going to go, because there's a large segment that are in the industry right now that are used to doing sports radio. And then you have hybrids kind of like us, where we've done sports radio, but we've also done podcasts, and like we're able to adapt quicker than the older ones in the industry can. So I'm kind of curious what's going to happen with that talent, where it's going to go.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, honestly, I got fired from the OG too, because that was the only place that I went to when I came home and filled in for them. So I was like, well, damn, I guess I don't have any radio gigs left in me. And that's honestly fine. Things change, people change. I wouldn't go back anyway without Joe and team, because they, steadily gave me runs and gave me opportunities to get some tape in. But I think it's just really the business side of it is what will always bother me, because at the end of the day, we're all still human. Like, I get you have your needs and your money, blah, blah, blah. But even if the best of the best can't keep the job, like, what is the hope for the rest of us who are either trying to get in, trying to get back in, or all the things? And I'm like, I mean, respectfully, if you look at two, Hispanic but white passing and a white guy, they can't, get that thing rolling. It also makes you feel like, well, damn, there really is no hope, for the rest of us. So I think that's just where you sit there and say to yourself, all right, well, times are really changing.
I knew after I got let go, because I was the creative director at a sports hub here in the Triad. It was the only 24/7 sports station in the Triad, and we had just gotten off a call a week before that our ratings had like tripled in like the last book. So I'm thinking, oh, this is great. All the moves that we've done to do all this stuff, it's actually working. And then you get walked into the office on Monday with HR sitting there, and you're like, oh, no.
Right.
And like everybody at BDOT, Chris Lee, you. Hell, David Glenn, who's on this episode, like David Glenn was on like more stations in the Triad syndicated than any sports show in history, and they let him go. So it's like, it's not a safe environment to work in at all.
It's not a if, but when at this point. I think that's what every sports radio broadcaster, experiences. But it also, gives you kind of new pathways and segments. I think that's why, podcasting has been successful, because if you have a good audience, people will follow you, especially, if it goes out, how the OG did, and people respect the work that they put in. So, those guys like that always bounce back on your feet. Cream always rises to the top. I don't see any of the people that you've mentioned, doing bad for themselves. So I just think it's about a pivot. Yeah. Right. Sometimes it's a pivot or readjustment.
That's the thing. I think all of us kind of realized at different points after it happened. I know after I got let go, literally as I'm walking through the parking lot to my car, I already knew what I was about to do. And I think everybody kind of figured out ways to do their own thing. And for somebody like BDOT, it like freed him to go do 50 things he wasn't allowed to go do before. So if anything, it's made it his brand even bigger, not being associated with where he was before. So good 100%. Good stuff. I kept you a little bit longer than I meant to, but that's okay. It's always fun to have Candace in the house. We'll be back with more franchise players right after the break. You're listening to TGI Friday on WWBG 1470 AM and on WTOB 96.7 FM 980 AM.
Franchise players are often referred to as the face of the franchise.
welcome back into Franchise Players here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and part of your TGI Friday lineup every Friday afternoon at 6 p.m. on WTOB 96.7 FM and 980 AM out in Forsyth County. You can catch it before that 5 o'clock at the end of TGI Friday on WWBG 1470 AM. Coming around third base is Panthers Radio Network's Jim Szoke joining us here. Talk a little Panthers talk. What's going on, Jim? How you doing?
Doing well, Desmond. First look today at Bryce Young and Panthers rookie mini camp. So start of a little bit of a spring football season here for the Panthers coming up.
Yeah, gosh, it feels like it just ended. Well, the NFL never ends, and we've learned this rule with how the NFL goes about their business in terms of Stanley Cup playoffs going on, NBA playoffs going on. Let's just drop a 2023 schedule release in the middle of all this, and we'll just slow drip games for like a week or so out just to keep people talking about the NFL. The release did happen Thursday night. And we've got the graphic up on the screen here for those watching on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio YouTube channel. What's the first thing that stood out to you at first glance of the Panthers schedule this year?
Well, first thing that really stood out was the fact that the home opener week 2 is Monday Night Football. So I thought that was interesting being that early in the year. You would think that the draw for them in primetime is Bryce Young, so I get they want to see something new and exciting. But I thought they might give the Panthers a couple of weeks to, see if for sure that he's a starter, first of all, because I think he will be, barring a setback of some kind of injury or something. But I think, Andy Dalton is still a possibility week 2. But I would expect Bryce Young to be the day one regular season starter. But I thought they might give him more time just for that and just to kind of let him get a little bit of football under his belt as opposed to being brand new, playing his first regular season 2 games at that point.
Yeah, I thought that Frank Wright basically saying Andy Dalton was the starter was just basically what he was supposed to say. It was April when he was asked the question, like you can't just be like, Bryce is our starter and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that was the correct thing to say. But I think all of us, especially those covering the team, we fully expect Bryce Young to probably be underneath the center week 1. After, of course, rookie minicamp starting this week. You're on your way out there right now. Training camps will start in July. So there's still a lot of room here for the offense to get installed and everything else. It just feels good. It's so fresh, and I know you've been with the Panthers since the inception. This whole thing. Let me say that question because it's going to be the last question I ask you. The Panthers have a second night game on their schedule, Thursday, November the 9th versus the Chicago Bears. It'll be the first time they see their former number 1 wide receiver, DJ Moore, since they traded him away. Do you think the perception of the Panthers has shifted nationally with everything that's happened over the past 3 or 4 months?
I think that there's definitely some juice, obviously, with Bryce Young coming in, and people want to see the new quarterbacks. I think Houston will get that same bump with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson coming in there. So I do think, they're looking to see, what's new. There's a lot of changes in the NFL with quarterbacks and some veterans retiring and aging out. In the case of Aaron Rodgers, moving to another franchise and basically in his last season or 2 of playing. So I think they're kind of looking for, what's the new thing that people are going to want to see in this. I think this rookie quarterback crop, people are interested in seeing, those guys, and we'll see how slow of a play it is for Anthony Richardson with the Colts, but with him too, maybe eventually moving at some point in his rookie season. I would expect that probably, later in the year than the other guys I mentioned. But yeah, I think the league is excited about having some new things to market and be excited about.
Joining us is Jim Szoke from the Panthers Radio Network. You can follow him on Twitter at Jim Szoke. Heading out to rookie minicamp to get a look at overall number 1 overall pick quarterback Bryce Young out of Alabama and some of our other rookies, undrafted free agents that got signed by Carolina as well. I know on the Believe in Panthers podcast yesterday, myself, Skylar Callahan, and Jonathan Stewart, we were very intrigued with running back Cameron Peoples from App State. So we'll get a chance to see if he can get a roster spot on this team. I've watched him at App the past couple of years, and I think he'd be a great addition if he can hang on there. I'm looking through the schedule, just trying to find any landmines or anything like that anywhere in here. The only spot where I'm kind of just looking at it side-eyed is their 3-week stretch from Thanksgiving weekend to December 10th, where they have 3 road games on the road. They've got the Tennessee Titans week 12 on the road. It's a 1:00 kick. They got Tampa on the December 3rd, and they've got the Saints on December 10th. So they got 2 divisional opponents right before they take on the Titans on November 26th, which is the Thanksgiving week game. Other than that, it looks pretty navigable in terms of being able to get through it. decently with everything they've put together. Going back to these rookies, though, and you're about to see some of them here in just a bit. The thoughts on the Panthers draft outside of Bryce Young? Which pick is the most interesting to you, and why?
Well, they only had 5 picks, right? So there's not
Yeah.
a lot to really go through because of the picks they traded. But I think obviously the most exciting possibility is what Jonathan Mingo will bring over time as a big-bodied, fast wide receiver. So we'll see. And there's a lot of different guys competing in that wide receiver room because I think, Terrace Marshall, seeing what he's going to be about in year 3 here and what he can bring will be interesting too. So obviously you start with the veterans with Adam Thielen, DJ Chark in there, and then add some of the young guys we mentioned there, Laviska Shenault and some others. It's an intriguing room as far as the pecking order of what wide receiver will look like. Usually you have 4 to 5 wide receivers, and the last 1 or 2 are going to be special teams guys, and so that'll be interesting to see. But I think the rest of it was depth for now. I think getting Zavala out of NC State was a great move, but something for depth. DJ Johnson, rotational depth at defensive end, and then getting is also good at time, but your expectations for those guys is just come in, be rookies, kind of learn their way, and be pieces for down the road.
Let's circle back to that number 1 pick, Bryce Young. What do you expect to see, like, with your own eyes this weekend? Because we've heard all the stuff about Bryce, his processing speed, his intangibles, his ability to throw open receivers, all these good things that we saw at Alabama. But now, I mean, he's officially a pro. He's officially a member of the Carolina Panthers. Is there something in particular you want to see with your own eyes when watching Bryce Young to kind of either confirm or deny something you may have heard about him, either a myth you can finally tuck away or something you're hoping he can do and you hope you get the chance to see it?
No, I don't think this part of it's going to be about that. There's a number of weeks of OTAs and then mandatory minicamp that'll be coming up late May, early June. So this is really first toes in the water. This is probably more about mental and learning the playbook and talking and classroom stuff and just getting a little bit of time out on the field. Like today's session is roughly an hour, like an hour and 10 minutes or something like that. So this is purely, even in that setting, just instructional at this point, especially being day 1 of a 3-day rookie mini camp here.
Right.
And then we'll get the veterans in 2 weeks. And when the veterans come in and fold in with that, we'll get a little bit more. But yeah, this is purely just, you got to know each other, I think, making relationships and bonds, getting the team started with these rookie guys. And, once you get the veterans in here, it'll pick up each week after that. But for now, it's just getting these guys used to being out of college and being with a pro organization now.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. They don't even know what they're running. Yet it's basically first day of school, pretty much, where they're coming in, getting their lockers, getting, where do you sit for lunch, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So they're doing all that today.
It's orientation day. Where's the library? Where's the bookstore?
So they'll have that going on. Jim Szoke joined us for the Panthers Radio Network, talking a little Carolina Panthers, the 2023 NFL schedule release. The NFL, like I said, they have a knack of making things events that probably have no business being events on the sports calendar, yet we flock to them. There's a reason why they are the 8,000-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to professional sports in this country. Overall, though, Jim, before I get you out of here, are you ready to give a grade on the offseason work from this Panthers front office in terms of roster creation? Like, how excited are you to see this team? Because you've been with them over 25 plus years. Is this a season that you could put up there as one of the seasons you've looked forward to more so than some other seasons? Maybe I didn't ask that right.
No, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a buzz. I think there's an energy and excitement, and I think people are excited about the new coaching staff. I mean, to be honest, I think we saw previous staff just wasn't going to get it done consistently, and now you go back to the tried and true of veteran coaching staff. That brings experience, especially grooming a quarterback in particular, from the head coach to Josh McCown being in there to Thomas Brown coming in from the Rams. Jim Caldwell will be involved with all 3 levels of football, offense, defense, and special teams. That's a lot right there. And then add Andy Dalton. I think they've done a lot in terms of just giving a young quarterback a chance to have a good mentorship and a lot of support just for him. But then I also like the fact that they went out in free agency and they, to me, kind of moneyballed it in a smart way. They filled spots with the receivers that we mentioned earlier. I think Miles Sanders was a great addition. Bringing in tight end. I mean, they really, if you look at it, fit all the skill positions in free agency to the point where they didn't have to reach for anything. And then defensively, we'll see. Obviously, adding safety like Von Bell, adding defensive line help. They've done a lot of good things. So by no means, is it complete, or did they bring in this long list of Pro Bowl guys as far as current Pro Bowl guys outside of Miles Sanders? But just good, solid professional football players who are solid starters in this league, who have a track record, have a history, and same for this coaching staff. So to me, Desmond just kind of feels like a nice foundation to kind of begin with. And then grow it from there and see what Bryce Young can do. And we'll see with this NFC South division not looking very overwhelming. There should be a team that should be able to compete right away for a division championship, I would think.
The Panthers open the season September the 10th against division rival Atlanta. They've got the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football the week after, September the 18th. We'll have Jim back on as we get deeper into the summer. Once we get into July, I'm thinking about maybe going down to Wofford. I've never been to training camp before, so I've got a couple of friends that go every year. So it's an experience definitely should try to have. So I might try to get down to Charlotte this year, and hopefully I'll get a chance to run into you while I'm down there. Jim, appreciate you coming on, bud.
Anytime, Desmond. Yeah, come on down to Spartanburg. We'll show you all the great places to get a burger and watch some football.
Yes, sir. It's you got me convinced. So that's the end for Franchise Players here for Friday, May the 12th, 2023. Stick around. Easterside Sports Network coming up here. High school state playoffs in action. The girls Easterside softball hosting Weddington. That's a 6:00 start with JP Mundy. I'll be on the call with Chad Delp at 7:00. East Forsyth baseball taking on Davie in the second round of the state playoffs. You can listen to both of those games online at tobaccoroadsportsradio.com.